Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to week number 9 of this 5th Zoom cycle. I'm proud I wish he were here. Andy's not here today, but I want to acknowledge the work that he's been doing lately is amazing. We now have a YouTube page. All you have to do is type in thebigbookstudy.com and it'll take you right there. And in the next 48 hours, tops, we will have the website up so that if you type in thebigbookstudy.com, it will take you to our website. Right now, Andy has it set up so that it'll go to the YouTube page, but we're on the verge of just turning on the switch and it'll go right to our page. And our page, again, thebigbookstudy.com. How great is that Andy managed to secure that? So in any case, welcome. We are on Bill's story. And what we've been trying to do as we go along with Bill's story is look for identification. For many years, I read Bill's story and all I could see were the differences. And I missed the entire point of the chapter. So I'm going to suggest that as we go through it, when we come across something that you really identify with, something about the way Bill acts and the way Bill thinks and the way Bill drinks, put a little pencil check mark next to it. And by the end of the chapter, you'll be surprised at how many check marks you have in there. And we're going to look for certain things in particular and specific things like Bill's progression. We're going to look for his progression through drinking for fun, moments sublime with intervals hilarious, to drinking because of necessity, to function, where it ceased to be a luxury and becomes a necessity, drinking to function, and then drinking for the worst reason of all, the sickest reason of all, the seeking of oblivion. So we're going to try and identify those points. And as we go through it, we're also going to identify points of Bill's desire for status and money and recognition, this big shotism, the King Bill of the Kingdom of Wilson syndrome, where he constantly uses hyperbole, which is intentional exaggeration, and always looks to build himself up, always striving for recognition, money, status, power. Where we are in the story, though, is pretty much towards the end of that. We are on page 6. I think we finished on the first paragraph, but I'm going to start it again. The paragraph that begins with the remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. I'm going to suggest that you highlight those first 4 lines, and in particular, let's underline those key words: remorse, horror, hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle is not there. Please underline, my brain raced uncontrollably. And there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. And let's underline terrible sense of impending calamity. This is one of the greatest descriptions of the morning terror of what it's like to have those DTs in the morning, to come to, and I won't say wake up, because I never woke up. I just came to in the morning. And all I could be filled with is remorse and horror and hopelessness. My brain is racing uncontrollably. My thoughts are all over the place. It's like a vegetable stew. And all I could think of is impending calamity, the disaster that is looking down the line that day and the disaster I might have created behind me in the last few hours. So that's one of the greatest descriptions of the spiritual malady that we experience the morning after. And I'm going to suggest that you also make note next to that: morning terror and madness. It's an expression that Bill's going to use in a few minutes. Let's remember what it means. We've just described morning terror and madness. And I'm going to continue. He says, I hardly dared cross the street lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was Scarcely daylight. Where's Big Willie now? Where is Bill? We were looking at his progression or regression, I should say, being able to handle the simplest tasks. He's not just the best of everything. Now he can't even walk across the street. He's like a child. And he says, an all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. And I have a question mark next to that because I don't think my nerves were ever stilled. I certainly have a check mark because I identify with it, but I don't know if you could ever say that my nerves were stilled. If I was conscious, if I was unconscious, yeah, my nerves were very still at that point. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Okay, there's the problem Bill's faced with. The market is going to hell again. Problem. Remember in the past, Bill was think problem, think solution, think solution, think alcohol. So we are now presented with the problem. What's Bill thinking of? Solution. What is solution? Alcohol. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. Let's highlight that and see how things have changed for Bill. He's now completely hopeless. Previously, when the market crashed back on page 4, he had that liquid courage came back. He'd show him there's no fight left anymore. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? Nope, not now. Then a mental fog settled down, and here's the solution. Gin would fix that. Remember, think problem, think solution, think alcohol. And I love the terms that the graphic expressions Bill uses. Here's one. Then a mental fog settled down. That is that alcoholic depression that sets in. What is alcoholic depression? It's remorse, it's horror, it's hopelessness, it's our brain racing uncontrollably. It's that feeling of impending disaster and calamity. The mind and the body are marvelous mechanisms. For mine endured this agony 2 more years. 2 more years. We're probably in the area of 1930 to 1933. But think about this for a minute. People accuse us of being weak-willed, right? Why can't you just say no? You must be weak. Could you endure that for 2 years? And I get another way to look at it. You think we're weak-willed? You try and maintain a $200 or $300 a day habit without a job. Without a job. You think that's easy? You try it. I did it for years. You think we're weak-willed and not resourceful? You try and maintain a $300 a day habit without having a job. Weak-willed, huh? Okay. Continuing. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse, and slender is not describing the shape of the purse. It's describing the fact that it's empty. There's not much money in it. It's slender, it's thin. And what does he do? He steals. He takes it. He doesn't look in it and say, gee, she might need this for rent. Nope. I need it to pay a bar tab. So he stole from his wife's slender purse when, and please highlight it this, the morning terror and madness were on me. Were on me. What's that again? That remorse, horror, hopelessness, the brain racing, the will to do battle was gone. The sense of impending calamity. Morning terror and madness were on me. Again, I swayed dizzily before an open window or the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for a weakling. A weakling. He is harshly and ignorantly judging himself to be weak of character, morally deficient. He's thinking himself to be a bad, weak person. Why? Because he still doesn't know what's wrong with him. Bill, as of this point, doesn't know what's wrong with him. He hasn't been in Towns Hospital yet. We're getting there. That's when he finds out what's wrong with him. And that provides some relief. I know it did for me to find out what was wrong with me, but knowledge alone is insufficient. It's an inadequate higher power. But at this point, he didn't even have that. All he figured was, I'm weak. I'm so weak, I can't even jump out a window or take poison out of the medicine cabinet. He doesn't understand what's wrong with him. He's harshly and ignorantly judging himself to be weak. Continuing, there were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. When I go through this book with individuals, I always like to stop at certain points and ask them questions. And here's one of those questions. Have you ever tried a geographical? A geographical cure, if you're new and haven't heard it, is thinking things will be better if I get somewhere else, if I get to the country, if I get to the city, if I get to my parents' house, if I get to wherever. The problem with that is wherever it is you're going, the first thing you encounter when you get there is you. Geographicals don't work. They are another example of inadequate higher powers. Self-knowledge is an inadequate higher power. Geographicals are as well. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture, physical torture is that craving, physical craving. Mental torture is the obsession combined with the physical craving. Then the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish, I feared I'd burst through my window, sash and all. Window sash, as I understand it, is the part of the window that holds the glass to the frame. So basically, he's thinking of jumping out the window and taking with such speed, with such strength, and I guess I'd say velocity, is that right? That it takes the whole window frame with it. Somehow, I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor, lest I suddenly leap. A doctor came with, please underline, a heavy sedative. And we're going to try our first screen share for the day, see how this goes. The doctor that we're talking about, and this is in your emails. Hopefully you did get the email. The doctor we're talking about is Dr. Leonard V. Strong. This Leonard Strong is happens to be Bill's brother-in-law, his sister's husband. And he's about to be admitted to the facility you see on the right in this picture, and that's Towns Hospital in Manhattan, 293 Central Park West. The building still stands today. It is a co-op. It's not a hospital. It's a co-op, like condos. It's between 89th and 90th Street. If you ever want to visit, I've gone there. I've stood in the lobby of that place, and knowing what happened there, I get chills every time I walk in there. But the address is 293 Central Park West, between 89th and 90th Street. And this gentleman on the left, Bill's brother-in-law, came and gave him some heavy sedatives. So now Bill is drinking and taking drugs. Ooh, wait a minute. We're not supposed to talk about drugs. I guess Bill didn't know that. Nobody told him that when he was writing the book, huh? Let's continue. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedatives. There's a question I always pose is, have you ever combined alcohol with any drug? Have you ever substituted a drug for the alcohol? And please underline this sentence. Very often this gets overlooked, and I think it's a very important point. He said, this combination, what's this combination? Alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs soon landed me on the rocks. Bill Wilson is bottoming out. That's what happens when you hit the rocks. When a boat, ship hits the rocks, it splinters. You're not putting it back together. It is the end of that vessel. And Bill is bottoming out. And please take note of the fact that he's bottoming out on a combination of alcohol and drugs. And if you've read Dr. Bob's Nightmare, and if you read Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, you know that Dr. Bob had a 17-year habit of sedatives. He was addicted to pills. During the day, he would take his pills, and at night, he would do his drinking. So if you set up a meeting today and were really strict and said nobody, only alcoholics could come, our founders wouldn't be allowed in because they were both addicted to alcohol and drugs. Please, this gets overlooked too much. I don't want to make too fine a point of it, but it's in the book. Bill is bottoming out, and he's bottoming out on a combination of alcohol and drugs. He didn't bottom out until the drugs came into the picture. People feared for my sanity. So did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking. I was 40 pounds underweight. Now let's stop for a second. Get a mental picture of Bill Wilson. I'm sure you've all seen him. He's a tall, skinny, gangly guy. He's skinny in good times. If he is 40 pounds underweight and he's not eating anything, he's living on alcohol, what does this sentence tell me? Bill Wilson is dying. He's dying of malnutrition. When somebody that skinny is 40 pounds underweight and surviving only on consuming alcohol, that person is dying of malnutrition. And that's what's happening here. My brother-in-law is a physician. We just saw the picture of Leonard Strong. And through his kindness and that of my mother, his mother's name is Dr. Emily Wilson, I was placed in a nationally known hospital for the mental and physical rehabilitation of alcoholics. That facility, as I showed you the picture a moment ago, is Towns Hospital, TOWNS. Actually, it's the Charles B. Towns Hospital. I don't want Gary to yell at me because I forgot to put his name in there. It's Charles Towns Hospital. This is summer of 1933. This is Bill's first admission to Towns Hospital. He was admitted 4 times. This is the very first one. This is roughly summer of 1933. So and it's not cheap to go there, incidentally. I think when I look up recently that it's the equivalent of like $300, $400, $500 a day. I'm sure. Gary, are you here? Can you give me tell me how accurate that is? Nope. Okay.
That was the original charges in the 1910s and so forth. He backed off when the place became more of a drying out place, so there were less than that, but it was still very expensive and you paid up front.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gary, so much. Gary is not only a friend, he's a great historian. He's written some great books on our fellowship. One is about Towns Hospital, and apparently there's a second volume coming out soon, right, Gary?
You're on mute, Howard.
Yeah, it's coming out soon. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble unmuting myself.
Okay. I'm sorry, and I muted me instead. I'm all right. All right, back to work. So he was admitted, financed by his mother, a physician, and his brother-in-law, a physician. They paid the bill to have him admitted to Towns Hospital in the summer of 1933. And he's saying, and he says, under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared. Hydrotherapy and mild exercise help much. Let's work backwards. Hydrotherapy. Let me give you an example of hydrotherapy. Hydrotherapy is where they took the patient and put him in a like a shower. I have to find the picture for you. Bear with me. Oop. Basically, it's like a cage, a shower that has sprouts, and they shoot hot water at you, and cold water, and hot water, and cold water, and hot water, and cold water. It's in the handouts that I sent you. It looks like that. That's hydrotherapy. I don't know if it ever cured anyone of alcoholism, but it probably made some really clean and shriveled alcoholics out of them. But that was hydrotherapy. Belladonna is a whole different story. One of the handouts I sent you is an article written by Gary on belladonna. Let me find these things for you. Let's take a look at this first. This is a graphic of what the belladonna treatment is. It's a combination of these various substances that are administered to the patient for 50 hours, around the clock, every hour on the hour. And then afterward, they administer castor oil. It's meant to clean out the intestines. Basically, this belladonna treatment was also known as the puke and purge method. Or as Gary told me the other day, they named it the damnation, diarrhea, delirium method. Damnation, diarrhea, delirium. That's what they were treating. Now, incidentally, and as I said, the article, there's the article. You all have it in your emails that Gary wrote that describes this whole process. You could read it at any time at your convenience. But Gary pointed something out to me that I think is pretty important. The chances are that Bill did not actually have the belladonna treatment administered to him. He was there 4 times. The chances are they would not administer it to him 4 times. The belladonna treatment was something that was developed by Dr. Lampert and Towns to administer to drug addicts for heroin, morphine. It was a method of treating that, but they couldn't use it because of the laws at the time. So they now administer it to alcoholics. And the chances are that Bill did not have this administered to him. And Gary's suggestion is that the reason why he even mentioned it in the book is a way to kind of give a little bit of a plug, if you will, to Towns Hospital. Why didn't he mention Towns Hospital by name? Well, one thing is Charlie Towns was an atheist, and that would create a bit of a controversy between the two. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that, this is Gary's book. King Charles, New York City, gets into all of those details. He's about to come out with the second version of that, but it gets into that. The point is, he's talking about something that he may or may not have had administered to him, okay? But let's go along with what he says. Belladonna, hydrotherapy, and mild exercise help much. Best of all, here's the most important point of all. I met a kind doctor, Dr. Silkworth, William D. Silkworth, or as those of us who know him well, Silky. We call him Silky. Hanging around the locker room is known as Silky. Silky wrote the doctor's opinion. I'm sure you all know that. Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though, please underline, certainly selfish and foolish, and please highlight the rest of this sentence. I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally. You may want to circle that word ill. It's the first use of that word in the book. It's also quite a revolutionary statement because at the time, alcoholism wasn't even known as an ism. It was thought to be a weakness. That if you can't say no, you're somehow morally deficient and weak. It's one of the reasons why Dr. Silkworth's name didn't appear in the doctor's opinion in the first edition, because he didn't want to take the flack that would come with it. He wrote an article years before that in the Lancet Journal where he explained his theories and took quite a workout over it, and didn't want to do that again. So Dr. Silkworth is explaining that he's seriously ill, bodily and mentally. Remember, in the doctor's opinion, he said any definition of alcoholism that does not factor in the physical is incomplete. So we have an illness made up of a body's reaction, the craving, the physical manifestation of alcohol is craving, and mental obsession. Why can't we stop once we start? Because of the physical allergy. We have an abnormal reaction. We went through this in the doctor's opinion. An abnormal reaction is defined as an allergy is defined as a body's abnormal reaction to any food, substance, or chemical. Normal people have a few drinks, a few lines, a few whatever's going around. You offer them some more, and they're going to say no. Either because I'm going to get sick if I do more, or I got to drive, so I got to take it easy. Or they start using some very strange language. They use terms like, I had enough. I'm right where I want to be. I don't need any more. I always drank with the expectation of arriving where I wanted to be if I just had another and just another and another. So my reaction, my abnormal, my allergic reaction manifested by craving is the physical portion of our disease. And the reason why we can't stay stopped is because when we are in these periods of forced abstinence, we have a spiritual malady that convinces us that we don't have an allergy. So we go in thinking this time it'll be different. We put that chemical in our system, trigger the physical allergy, and we're on the road again. And that's what he's saying here, that we are seriously, he didn't just say ill, seriously ill, bodily and mentally. And you may next to that want to write obsession and allergy. That's what makes us alcoholics. We have the allergy, we have the obsession. One of the things I like to do is as we go through the book, whenever we find terms like alcoholic, recovered, so on, we're going to put A/O above it, allergy, obsession, just so we remember who he's talking about. Because I could very easily read this and think he's talking about somebody else. I have an allergy. I have the obsession, so he's talking about me. Okay, next paragraph. I'm going to suggest that you highlight the first 4 lines. It's one of Bill's many, many run-on sentences, but it's an important point. He said, it relieved me. Relieved. You may want to underline that. It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. Question I ask when I'm working with somebody is, does that knowledge relieve you? Do you feel any kind of relief knowing that you're not a morally corrupt, deficient, bad person? that you have this actual serious illness? Does it relieve you a bit? Certainly did for me. So I've got a big check next to that. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Let's underline explained. And let's underline these next two words: understanding myself, self-knowledge. Self-knowledge, I fared forth in high hope. So they released him. For 3 or 4 months, the goose hung high. That's an expression that was used in the 19th century, mostly by farmers. It indicated that if the geese were flying above your crops, if they were flying close to the ground, there were evil spirits present. If the geese are flying high, there are not evil spirits present now. It's an impending statement. They'll be there at some point, but the point is the geese hung high means he was able to stay sober for a period of time. If he were a farmer and he saw the geese flying high, there's no evil spirits on the crops. If the geese come down to the lower, where they're flying lower, evil spirits are present. In this case, that would mean he's drinking. So the goose hung high. He was managing to stay abstinent. I won't even say sober, but abstinent. I went to town regularly and even made a little money. Let's highlight this beauty. Surely this was the answer: self-knowledge. Let's underline that. And when you're going through this with the sponsee, you ask him at this point, did you ever think that self-knowledge would be enough? I did. When I was in treatment for the first time and they told me about some of this stuff, I said, whoa, that's a relief. Well, let's see how self-knowledge did for Bill. And let's highlight the first sentence. But it was not, for the frightful day came when I drank once more. I pose a question to my prospect. I pose it to you. Let me read that sentence again. The frightful day came when I drank once more. The question is, did he drink once more because of the allergy, or did he drink because of the obsession? Of course, it's the obsession. The allergy can only affect us when it's in us. Before we put it in us, it's all up here. It's all in our mind. So when he drinks here, once more, he says, that frightful day, it's because of the obsession. To take it a step further, it's actually because of the spiritual malady that we are restless and irritable and discontented, and that just is an understatement. When sober, the first step of ours says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, which says I can't handle alcohol. But there's a dash in the middle of the first step, and it says that our lives have become unmanageable, which means I can't handle sobriety either. And that's my problem. I don't have a problem with alcohol. I have a problem with sobriety. So let's continue. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. I don't know if anyone here has ever relapsed. Those of you who know my story know that I've celebrated 10-year anniversaries 3 times. Not too many knuckleheads who can make that statement. But I've been back since 2006, and I found this book, and I know found the answer. But the point is, he's talking about he had a period of abstinence, 3 or 4 months. He started to drink again. And the velocity, the intensity with which he started drinking was, he felt like he fell off a ski jump. It was that rapid. And that's because our disease is progressive, whether we are drinking or not. So in those few months that he wasn't drinking, his disease was running alongside of him all the time. And when he picked up that first drink, his body reacted as if it had been drinking every one of the days that he wasn't drinking. That's what we're talking about when we say the disease is progressive, even when we're not drinking. Because when we do pick it up, it's like a ski jump, straight down. After a time, I returned to the hospital. So in the margin next to that, let's write summer 1934. So the first stay was summer of 33. Now we're back in summer 34. 1 year between the first two stays. This was the finish, the curtain, it seemed to me. My weary, despairing wife was informed that it would all end with heart failure during delirium tremens, or I would develop a wet brain, perhaps within a year. A wet brain is just dementia caused by alcoholism. It's actually got a mental terminology. You may want to write it down next to where it says wet brain. You may want to write down Korsakoff, Korsakoff, Korsakoff syndrome. Korsakoff syndrome is an irreversible mental disorder caused by alcoholism, alcohol misuse. It's irreversible. It's dementia caused by alcohol. And sobriety does not restore it. It's permanent. So he's saying that Lois, his wife, was informed by Dr. Silkworth that he's likely to end in delirium tremens. You could have stroke in DTs, or develop a wet brain. Delirium tremens are just, those shakes, hallucinations, those the trembling, violent restlessness, all as a result of detoxification from alcohol. Okay, she would soon have to give me over to the undertaker or the asylum. And next to that, I've just written the following 3 words: jails, institutions, or death. Those are our options: recovery or jails, institutions, and death. The undertaker or the asylum. They didn't need to tell me. I knew and almost welcomed the idea. It was a devastating blow to my pride that he could have the nerve of using that word pride at this point. How hopeless and how much he's fallen, to still say he's got some pride. I, who had thought so well of myself, and again, another example of this grandiosity, of this quest for status, still thinking that he's something better than he is, even at the point he's at right now. He said, I who had thought so well of myself and my abilities, of my capacity to surmount obstacles, was cornered at last. Let's underline cornered at last. Where's Big Willie now? Where's King William of the Kingdom of Wilson? Where'd he go? He's out of town. Now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. Sots is just an archaic word for drunks. And archaic is just another way of saying old-fashioned. So it's an old way of saying drunks, sots. When was the last time you ever heard anyone call someone else a sot? Okay, I thought of my poor wife. There had been much happiness. And please highlight these next 2 sentences. What would I not give to make amends? But that was over now. I've got it highlighted, and next to it, I've written, he's hopeless. He's right at our door. He's about to knock on that door. Trembling. Let's underline that. Trembling. I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Let's underline this next sentence and circle the first word. Fear sobered me for a bit. So now we have another unreliable, inadequate higher power. Self-knowledge, inadequate. Fear, inadequate, unreliable. They work for a time, just like frothy emotional appeals, as Dr. Silkworth said. These are all things that do have some effect. I know when my father and my brother and relatives appealed to me to please, please stop. Look what you're doing to your family. I stopped. That frothy emotional appeal got to me for a bit. Fear
Sorry,
might
Howard.
be for a bit.
You missed this paragraph. No words can tell.
Oh, I skipped that?
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm so sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you very much. Oh my God, that's such an important paragraph. Let's go back. Thank you, Vince. That next paragraph, when he says, but that was over now, the next paragraph, no words can tell. Let's highlight that whole paragraph. I use this paragraph when I tell my story. I don't know how I could have missed it. No words can tell of the loneliness, let's underline loneliness, and despair, let's underline despair, I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. A morass is something like a swamp. It's something that traps us, confuses us, impedes our progress, like trying to walk through 2 feet of snow. That's what a morass is. It's like a swamp. In that swamp of self-pity, and let's underline self-pity. Please underline this next sentence. It's one of my favorite sentences in the book. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. Whenever I tell my story, I include that line because that's what it felt like at the end. I just couldn't grasp onto anything. The faster I worked to try and grab onto something, the faster I sunk. Think of how that sensation. Quicksand surrounded me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. Bill has just taken step one, incidentally. He acknowledged that alcohol was his master. He finally, without knowing it, took step one. Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Fear sobered me for a bit. Then came the insidious insanity of the first drink. Insidious, again, is just something that's waiting to get you, lying in wait. Something that begins inconspicuously, according to a 1939 dictionary. It's something that begins inconspicuously, but has grave consequences. It doesn't end well. That's what insidious means. The insidious insanity of the first drink, and on Armistice Day, 1934, I was off again. Armistice Day, 1934, the actual date is November 11, 1934, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened on that date. Bert, if you're here, I'm going to read to you from this book, Bill W. Biography. This is written by Francis Hartigan. And if you happen to have the book, I'm on page 55. But what it says is this. It describes what happened here. He said he had that first drink on Armistice Day, his last debauch. This is what happened. On November 11th, 1934, Bill decided to occupy himself with a round of golf at a public course on Staten Island. Bill lived in Brooklyn. The golf course was in Staten Island. You'd have to take a train, a ferry. It was a bit of an effort to get there, but that's what he was going to do because it was a public course. They didn't charge. To get there, he had to first take a subway into Lower Manhattan, then walk to the ferry terminal. Once on the Staten Island side, a bus would take him halfway across the island to the golf course. Bill's seatmate on the bus was carrying a rifle. When Bill struck up a conversation with the man, he learned that his new friend would be celebrating Armistice Day with some target practice. His destination was a rifle range a little further down the island than the golf course. As they talked, the bus was struck from behind by another bus. No one was hurt, but the bus they were on was damaged so badly that they had to wait for a substitute bus. While they waited, Bill's new friend suggested they visit a nearby bar. The man ordered scotch. When Bill ordered ginger ale, the man asked why he wasn't drinking. In reply, Bill launched into a long-winded presentation of Dr. Silkworth's theory about alcoholism as a mental obsession accompanied by a physical allergy. So he doesn't just say, I can't drink. He goes into a whole spiel about what alcoholism is to this poor guy. He also recounted in some detail the difficulties he'd had before coming to the conclusion that he simply could not drink any amount of alcohol whatsoever. So he's telling him how bad his reaction is to it. He's telling him why. And this guy's drinking scotch and Bill's drinking ginger ale. What do you think's going to happen here? The substitute bus arrived, and the men continued their journey uneventfully, arriving at the stop near the golf course around lunchtime. The man with the rifle disembarked to take another bus to the rifle range. At his suggestion, they decided to have lunch together. Bill ordered another ginger ale with his sandwich, and his friend ordered another scotch. As they were about to leave, suddenly, here's what when suddenly hits. Suddenly, the bartender chose this moment to come over to the two of them with scotches and invite them to have an Armistice Day drink on the house. Bill downed the scotch without a moment's hesitation. The man with him could not believe it. You must be crazy, he said. Bill, aware of what he had done, replied in the affirmative. The man went on to his target practice. Bill continued to drink. He finally arrived home at 5 o'clock in the morning, so drunk that he fell in the entryway under the stairs in the house and gashed his head. Lois, who had not slept at all, worrying about him, found her husband on the floor, unconscious and bleeding badly. That's the story of his last debauch, the Armistice Day drink. Again, it's in a couple of books, but this one's from Francis Hartigan's book, Bill W. It's in your recommended reading that we sent out a few weeks ago. If you want a copy of that, just send me an email to this address and ask for the recommended reading list. Where am I? Okay, we're back to the book, page 8, paragraph 2, where it says, I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty, that means without a doubt, it's going to happen, that I would have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end. Let's highlight how dark it is before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last debauch. Debauch's drinking spree. That Armistice Day drink was the beginning of his last run. I'm going to ask that you highlight in pink the rest of this paragraph. Pink we use for promises and prayers. I'm sure somebody will put the details in. There it is. Susan put it in the chat. We kind of like to color certain things like musts, recovered references, approach references, prayers, promises. So if you want to go through the book to see, say, how many musts are there in the book? Just go through it and look for all the things highlighted in green. I can tell you the list that we've been compiling has 141 references to must. So much for there are no musts in AA. There's a crap load of them in the book, but we highlight prayers and promises in pink. A lot of alliteration. But this is an important one. I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. Please underline fourth dimension of existence. Catapult. Catapult's like a slingshot. You put that stone in the like the pocket, pull it back on the rubber band and let it go. And the further you pull it back, the further it projects out. So he's going to be catapulted, which is just another way of saying launched, really. He was launched into the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness. Let's underline usefulness. And above it, I've written our real purpose. That's our mission, is to be helpful, to be of service, to be useful. And usefulness in a way of life, and let's underline way of life. It's an ongoing process. The way of life in Alcoholics Anonymous is called the 12 steps. It is an ongoing process. It doesn't end. We keep doing it over and over. It's our way of life. That is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. What a great promise. Now let's break it down a little bit. What does he mean by fourth dimension of existence? Well, I'm one of those people who believe that there are three basic dimensions in life. There's the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. I know there's a big speaker going around the circuit who has a whole diatribe on why there are two dimensions. I'm sorry, I could read English. And Bill mentions three dimensions over and over and over again. He talks about the spiritual, he talks about the mental, he talks about the physical. Those three dimensions. My relationship with God is the spiritual. My relationship with myself is the mental. My relationship with you, with the world and everyone in it is the physical dimension. And if I am right spiritually, I'm at peace with God. If I am right mentally, I'm okay up here. And if I'm right with my fellow man, then I am in harmony in those three basic dimensions of life, which means I'm now functioning in a fourth dimension, which is the harmonious blend of the other three. The fourth dimension is the harmonious blend of the spiritual, the mental, and the physical dimensions. Those three basic dimensions, we get in harmony. We get in harmony spiritually by working the first three steps. We get in harmony mentally by working 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we get in harmony with our fellow man in steps 8 and 9. So as a result of working those first 9 steps, we are in harmony spiritually, mentally, physically. And if we're in harmony in those three dimensions, we are now walking in a fourth dimension of existence, the realm of the spirit. Let's see, where are we? Okay, let's continue a little bit. Oh, this is perfect. Okay. Near the end of that bleak November, that's November 1934, I sat drinking in my kitchen. With a certain satisfaction, I reflected there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through that night and the next day. Anyone ever experienced that? Knowing the availability, knowing where that alcohol or those drugs are in the house provides a certain amount of satisfaction, does it not? Right? Just walking into the liquor store creates a certain amount of satisfaction. Calling up a man, making arrangements to meet to pick up something. The second I hang up the phone, I'm already getting vibes. I'm getting satisfaction. It's on the way. And if I know I have something in the house concealed wherever it is, there's a certain satisfaction in knowing it's there. Anyone ever experienced that? Yeah. Okay. So, with a certain satisfaction, I reflected there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through the night and the next day. My wife was at work. I wondered whether I dared hide a full bottle of gin near the head of our bed. I would need it before daylight. Anyone ever experienced that? What we call the wake up dose? And to me, it's a misnomer because I don't wake up. It's more like the come to dose. My musing, and musing is just deep thought. His deep thought. What is his deep thought about, incidentally? He just explained it in the previous paragraph. Having satisfaction that there's alcohol concealed around the house. I have what I need to get through to the next morning. That's as far as he can see it. He's deep in thought and he's thinking about alcohol. What do? That's what alcoholics and addicts do. We get and use and think of ways and means to get and use more. That's what he's experiencing here. He said, the cheery voice, oh, I'm sorry, my musing was interrupted by the telephone. The cheery voice of an old school friend asked if he might come over. That school friend's name is Ebby, E-B-B-Y, Thatcher. Let's see if I could get this one to work. Here's Ebby Thatcher as a young man. Here's a picture of an older Ebby Thatcher with Bill Wilson. And here's another picture of the two boys. Ebby Thatcher was a schoolhood friend of Bill's. Ebby Thatcher was, according to Bill Wilson, the worst alcoholic he ever met. Bill said that if I ever got as bad as Ebby Thatcher, I'd have to quit drinking. I couldn't last. I couldn't go on drinking like Ebby Thatcher. And he hadn't heard from Ebby in a while. And Ebby calls. And it says, he was sober. Italicized. That must be important. Please highlight and underline those three words. He was sober. It was years since I could remember his coming to New York. In that condition, I was amazed. Rumor had it that he'd been committed for alcoholic insanity. I'm going to stop right there. We're going to leave it on the hoof, on the cliff. What's going to happen with Ebby Thatcher? Who's Ebby Thatcher? What's he bringing? What's he going to do to our story? Because I'm going to also suggest that under this paragraph, under the line, the very thing an Oasis drinkers are like that, I'm going to ask that you draw a line across the page. And above the line, let's write end of part 1, Bill's descent into hell. Above the line, let's write end of part 1, Bill's descent into hell. And under the line, we'll write part 2. Nothing in Bill Wilson's life is ever going to be the same again. Nothing in my life, nothing in your life.
Howard, sorry to interrupt you. Can you just repeat where to draw the line?
Oh, yeah,
again?
sure. Under the line that says, that paragraph that I just read was reading, ends with the line, the very thing an Oasis drinkers are like that. Under that line, draw a line across so that the line is also above the statement, the door opened and he stood there. So between those two lines, we're going to draw a line across. Once again, as Kathy asked, the paragraph ends with the very thing an oasis. Drinkers are like that. We draw a line across the page under that. Above the line is end of part one, Bill's descent into hell. And under the line, for now, let's just write part two.